This is J.G. Hertzner. You're listening to NX 7062 Podcast.
And welcome to the 7062 Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. It is, as always, Monday night here on the East Coast, 10 o'clock. We're expecting snow for really the first time this year. We'll see if it actually happens or not. But I am safe and warm and snug inside my studio, quote unquote, my office, because we are going to be hanging out, and we are going to have a very special guest, and we're getting to him in just a few minutes. But as always, I've always got a little something to say before we get to the main event. And the first thing I want to say tonight is congrats to Nicole DeBoer. Her new season of Private Eyes just started. So if you're up in Canada, you can watch it on Canadian TV. I was hoping that it was simultaneously going to start here in the U.S., but I don't think Ion Television is picked it up, or they aren't going to run it right yet. But anyway, if you are up in Canada, Private Eyes. Sorry, don't know what channel it is, but anyway. So congrats to Nikki on the new season. Hello, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us. The other quickie little update I have is that they're up to 103 guests at STLV 55-year mission, whatever they're calling it. Armin Shimmerman, Kitty Swank, and Roxanne Dawson have just been added to the guest list. So I'm really excited. Hopefully we're all going to be on track to head out to Vegas. Fingers crossed. And in fact, my very special guest tonight, my first Star Trek alum guest of the season, is signed up for STLV. So we're going to be talking about that, among other things. So everybody, welcome Cirroc Lofton. Hey, Cirroc. We're still having mic issues. Still can't hear you. Nope. Hey, Travis. I can sit here and vamp. I'm really good at vamping while you figure out the mic issues. Yeah, they're saying you're muted, so you must have pulled the mic. The mic must not.
Can you hear me now if I talk like this?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's try it. All right. Robert says hello, Cirroc. Thank you so much for joining me. It's my first Star Trek alum of the new season of the NX 7062 podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And also and a very good friend of mine, Nick DeMatteis, joining the conversation. Hi, Nick, first time viewer. So glad you're here as well. But Cirroc is no stranger to podcasting, and another congratulations goes out because you guys just celebrated the second anniversary of the seventh rule, right?
Yeah, we just celebrated second anniversary, and the time has flown by. It's been pretty amazing.
It has. You guys now have the hashtag chat pack going for you, which trying to catch their attention. No, you guys have a great following. I love your show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. What I really love is, a lot of times you talk to actors just across the board, I think, and you say, oh, well, have you seen yourself in this? And a lot of them are like, no, I don't like to watch myself. You are actually rewatching DS9 so that you guys can sit down and talk about it every week.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it rewatching. I'm watching it, some of it for the first time, so it's a first watch.
Is it a surreal experience for you to sit down and watch it like that, or does it feel like going home? How is it for you to be sitting down and watching it?
It's funny. It's like it just brings back good memories of childhood and being on the set, and I also get to see some of their, everybody's performances. So I get to see how everybody as fans saw them as actors and in their characters. So I'm learning about that too.
And, that actually leads me to one of the questions I had for you. Obviously, you have a family in real life. You got a mom and dad, but you also had Avery Brooks on the show. Was he ever like that kind of father, like a second father figure to you? Was there advice, fatherly advice he ever gave you that you still carry with you?
Yeah, all the time. He did so much as far as that's concerned. I mean, just guidance and being there, listening to my, problems in life, and being a supporting voice for when I wanted to do things. So he's always been there for me, to this day, as a matter of fact. So
Yeah.
He's a guiding light in my life. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's amazing. I guess when you you honestly, when you're filming something like that for as many years as you filmed it, I would assume you spent more time on the set with Avery than with pretty much anybody else as outside in the real world.
Yeah, I would end up spending most of my days with him, and um, when you're spending 14, 12, 14, 16 hours a day together, you get to really see all different sides of people, and be outside of Avery. I guess Aaron Eisenberg was also another person that I spent a lot of time doing shows
Right.
with and doing episodes with.
And it's funny. I'm going to ask you to kind of tell this story again because I know I asked you when you were kind enough to do the Lambda Quadrant Holocon a little while back. But I always love the story about how you didn't, as a teenager, you didn't realize that Aaron was actually an adult for a very long time. You kind of thought you guys were peers hanging out.
Yeah, because he was always showing up earlier and getting in makeup, and most of the guys who did the heavy makeup would be there hours before us.
Sure.
So, you didn't get to see them until after they were in makeup by the time you show up for your call time. And that's how it was with Aaron and I. So Aaron, you would always have his Ferengi stuff on, and I would see him in costume with all the makeup, and I really didn't know the person underneath the makeup. I didn't know the real man underneath it. So, when I finally did get to see him, he said hi to me, and he was being real cool, and he said, "Hey, Cirroc, I'm going home tonight. Good night." And I had to ask him, "So who are you?" I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but I don't know you. And he said, "Yeah, you do. It's me. It's me. It's your friend."
But I mean, I think it's so wonderful that you guys. I mean, Aaron. I think part of the reason too. I mean, besides the fact he was playing younger, Aaron is such a youthful. Always was such a youthful soul. I think just being around him and everything. I mean, it's very. I think it would be really easy not to realize that he was 23. I think when you guys started, somewhere around
Yeah, he's such a youthful spirit. He's such a playful person,
there. Mm-hmm.
and he approached things with so much energy too. So he had a lot of energy, a lot of exuberance. Really excited to be there. So he was the closest in age, but I guess maturity-wise, we were kind of on the same level as far as maturity.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, it just when you build, I think when actors build those kind of relationships personally off screen, I mean, it absolutely comes through so well when you're on screen. And
you can't fake chemistry, right? I mean, if you have chemistry with somebody, then it's just obvious and it just flows. It's not forced. Your relationship is easy going. But when there's no chemistry, it kind of, you can see it. It makes things difficult. It's just like in any other relationship with people.
right, because I mean, writers and directors can only do so much when it comes down to that, to the chemistry, because that is really something that's very organic between the actors. And I feel like Deep Space Nine really covered that well. I think on set, I think you guys just all had a really great chemistry.
We had great chemistry. We also had good writing, and the writers wrote for the chemistry, so they probably spent a lot of time investigating the subtle nuances between characters and the interactions between each other, and they observed that people were closer together than others, and they kind of expounded upon that and made it really part of the show. And it was so well written. I think as far as relationships and friendships are concerned, I think that's one thing that makes Deep Space Nine extra special, is because we actually care about the characters in a personal way.
And that actually leads me to my next question, because I noticed on your IMDb page you've actually worked on some fan-driven Star Trek. Let me see, I don't want to get this wrong. You've done Renegades, and you've also done Of Gods and Men, which are two fan-driven Star Trek projects. Is there a difference in the writing? Is there a difference in the feel? Like, can you compare and contrast kind of Deep Space Nine versus these fan projects?
I guess the main difference is budget. It's the biggest difference because the fans are really aware and well versed on everything on Star Trek, so they know the history, they know all the books and where all the storylines in the different books go. They have so much information to add and offer. So when they do their projects, it's pretty close to canon or what
Right.
canon would be. So they're very well versed in that, and they make it quality. I think it adds a certain level of quality. But the biggest difference is budget, obviously. But the funness factor, I think, is higher when you're doing the fan film because everybody's kind of wanting to be there, almost willing to volunteer to do the work, just because they want to see it done.
Right. So it's it's obviously less of a paycheck kind of deal as opposed to just, we really want to do this and we really enjoy it. But you feel like and I've watched some of these. I did a show a little while back about all the fan driven Star Treks, and you really do get that kind of feel. And I think you're right. I think a lot of the qualities there, the attention to detail. It must be nice to know that if you wanted to change a line or a word, you wouldn't have to run it up the flagpole to 20 different people, though, right? You just have to do
Yeah, that was a good thing. That's definitely more lenient in that department. And also, I think a little bit more creative, too, because one of the handicaps of the big productions is that you have to answer to networks and the studios, and they all have their critique and criticism, and therefore they can edit and rearrange the content. But the fan films are kind of not really beholden to anybody, so they can explore a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. And they can kind of get out, sometimes I think the fans can have a better idea of where things should have gone, or at least, a different take on where things should have gone. One of my favorite little things, and this isn't necessarily fan driven per se, but the fact that, in Enterprise, the last episode, don't want to spoil this if you haven't seen it, but they killed off Trip Tucker. And the fans just went ballistic. They thought it was like the worst thing that they could have ever done. Literally, the last episode, you killed off a beloved character. But the books brought him back. Just because, and fan fiction brings him back, So I think that there's definitely that where the fans are like, we really kind of wanted to see it go in this direction. So they do it for love because they love the franchise so much.
Yeah, and I would say that the new batch of Star Trek that's been coming out under the tutelage or watchful eye of Mr. Kurtzman, I think a lot of that has been really cognizant of checking boxes for the fans so that they see different things that they relate to and different storylines that they can attach to the past. So I think they're doing a good job of checking off those boxes of trying to make tie-ins from the past and also, please the fans essentially.
And you know what? I think I would have to agree with you on that. First of all, I believe this is one of the chat pack members. Oh, come on, Mousy. There we go.
Yeah. That's my guy, Mr. Bill Erickson.
Oh, let's see. Don't tell Connor. No.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of Connor's. He has a big fan base on my show. A lot of people love Trip Tucker.
Connor's great. I love Connor to bits and pieces. Just as a human being, he did the podcast back in April when it was just voice. But I love seeing. He's one of the favorite things. One of my favorite things to do at a Star Trek convention is get my Connor hug. I usually get a hug every time. In fact, he owes me one. We actually had this whole conversation when he was on the show about how we were hoping the pandemic would be over and we'd see everybody in Vegas, and he said he wants to hug. He misses physical contact. I'm like, can I get on that list?
You're on the hug list. I'm
on Connor's hug list. You gave me a side hug once. I don't know if you remember. We met at a function. What was it? 2018, I guess. You came out to an event, an off-campus event, and everybody was hungry, so I brought pizza. That was me. I was the pizza girl at all you guys at that event. And I remember, like, Cirroc Lofton gave me a little side hug. He's great because I fed y'all.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. That was a little side hug action never hurts.
Never hurts, but now that we've been doing all this, I expect a real one if we all end up in Vegas. I know there's still.
I'll have a real, authentic hug waiting for you.
All right, and then I'll have to compare and contrast with you and Connor. But I don't know. Yes, Trip is awesome. We all agree Trip is awesome. But Jake was awesome too. We got to watch Jake grow up, which I think is always interesting. I always find it interesting when you watch a show that's gone on as long as Deep Space Nine to kind of your character's not just evolving, you're actually maturing, which I think is always a very interesting path to take.
Yeah, it was very interesting, growing up in space kind of in that way. The biggest adjustments for me were obviously going through puberty and things like that, and personal things.
Sure.
But and also being around a bunch of adults a lot of times. So just surrounded by adults, that was a challenge for me, finding people to relate to, my age.
Oh yeah, right. Again, because you're on set so much, as opposed to actually just out in the real world, hanging with peers, as non-actors would. So
Yeah.
but here you are, and you made it, and you're one of those child actors that actually got out alive, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's a blessing. I can't
Absolutely.
really. I'm
Absolutely.
really grateful that I was able to do that, because I do know a lot of people that didn't make it. A lot of people that ended up really struggling in terrible kind of personal issues. So I'm grateful that I had the kind of foundation, and a lot of that had to do with also Avery. We talked about his guidance and what he was doing for me. He was really steering me away from the pitfalls of success and the things that tempt you as an actor. And
So he's keeping you grounded.
yeah, he was keeping me grounded and actually being an excellent example for me, because he was very family oriented person. He wasn't a party person. He was very respectful around people, a gentleman with women, and
Right.
there's so many different things that he led by example. And
All right. Well, there you go, Jake. And we were talking about Jake and Nog's friendship. It's one of the highlights for me. I really enjoy it when watching the two together. Right from the get. I think one of the things, and I have to admit, I've watched Deep Space Nine. I've seen all of Deep Space Nine. But I started a rewatch. I'm terrible. I am not a binge watcher per se. So I'm only maybe halfway through the second season.
Okay.
But it was after, I sat down and started doing it after I had become friendly with Aaron and meeting you and everything. So it's really kind of nice to sit down and watch that friendship develop right from the first episode, because you guys were kind of like the only two kids you were peers and you kind of gravitated towards each other. So that's one of my favorite. Oops, you know what? I knew my green screen wasn't going to hold up. You know what? But this bad green screen is so much better than what's behind it. So just last a little bit longer. But speaking of your peers from the show, the other, and you can't even call it a fan base, but you've been doing Alexander Siddig and Andrew Robinson have their little YouTube project.
Sid City Social Club.
Alone Together, the DS9 Alone Together, yeah.
Yes.
And you've been doing that. What's it like getting back together with old castmates?
Oh wow, it's really it's fun, because it's like brings back so many good memories, and it feels good to kind of pick back up where we left off. A lot of us felt that we should have been taking the path that they did in Next Generation, which was making movies after we finished our show.
Right.
And so a lot of us thought that would be the case. But that didn't turn out to be the case, and we ended up wrapping it up at 7 seasons, and that was pretty much the end of it and the last you saw of us. So revisiting those stories and kind of taking them on in new life, I think, is long overdue. And I wish that it was done by the studios, so that we could have actually had more material out there for people to watch.
Right. Well, I know the Deep Space Nine documentary actually, kind of did a little homage with an 8th, kind of like introducing like the 8th season of Deep Space Nine. But nothing compared to, what you guys are doing, which is, episodic and something nice that people can revisit that were fans of the show. I did watch a little bit of the last episode of Deep Space Nine the other day. I happened to catch it. And that last scene where it's just Jake watching that wormhole and Kira comes up, I just thought that was just such a poignant, perfect way to end it. And it sort of kind of honestly, because the way they pulled back on the space station, it actually kind of reminded me of the ending of The Empire Strikes Back, where they were all just kind of standing there looking off, hopefully. That must have been, that's pretty iconic to be able to be in like that last scene and that last shot. I thought that was kind of cool that you were included in that. I just didn't know if you had any like special memories or feelings about that. And knowing obviously that they do tend to shoot things out of order. So, that could have been.
They shoot things out of order, but they did let me know that was the last shot. And that's, what they were going to end the show on. Certainly an honor for me to be chosen for that moment. I think Ira explained it in a way that he thought it was a good closure for the show, kind of the end of Jake's maturation and the beginning of a new time going forward with Sisko now kind of entering into the gods and the heavens and
Right.
Everything kind of left in Kira's hands now going forward. So I thought that was a great ending, and I obviously was honored that they would choose me to be the focal point of it.
Absolutely. This is something back to what you were saying about Avery. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And then there you go.
Oh yeah.
You guys could have run around selling self-sealing stem bolts. That could have been like your role.
Yeah, one of the great things about Jake and Nog is that we overcame a lot of stereotypes, right? There were so many pressures on us to be a certain way and behave a certain way because of whatever cultural differences that we had. And I think that the big thing that we did was overcome those differences and really bond in a true way, accepting each other's flaws, accepting each other's cultural differences, accepting each other's, physical differences, and being there for each other as friends are, supporting emotionally. And, when Jake taught Nog how to read so that he could, be better in school and not be embarrassed. So, those were really special moments, I think, that got into the details, into the weeds of what real friendships are about.
Well, and as usual with Star Trek, where they always try to make, points. And the point is overcoming, Quark didn't want Nog to become friends with a human. Your dad wasn't real thrilled with the idea. And you guys said, you know what? It doesn't matter. All it matters is we're friends, that we have this connection. It doesn't matter that he's a Ferengi and I'm a human. What matters is this connection and looking past everything else.
Right, which in its own little microcosm is kind of overcoming racism,
Exactly.
Interspecies racism, but still
bias, definitely, yeah. Absolutely. And again, and I say this so many times on the show, everybody who watches the show is probably sick of it, but I'm all about organic messaging. Don't push something at me. Don't shove something at my face. Just because you want to tell me something doesn't mean that you have to beat me over the head with it.
Right.
If it's good storytelling, it's organic, and you don't even realize that somebody's trying to tell you something until like the end, and you're like, oh. And that when you have, that's what it's about. It's you watching a story and at some point having an aha moment. Not this story is killing me, because it's like, I say this about Supergirl. I don't like Supergirl because that's what Supergirl.
Okay.
I think I actually had this conversation with Aaron when we were in Albany about how I'm all about messaging, but Supergirl was beat you over the head with a hammer with it. Whereas when Star Trek does it, things like Let This Be Our Last Battlefield back in the original series and everything, it's a very organic storytelling that just kind of makes you go, I see it, without feeling like it's being shoved down your throat. And I think Deep Space Nine really did that, especially with you and Nog.
Absolutely. And reviewing the episodes, that's one of the things that I'm noticing the most is how well the writing was. Just how they subtly infuse things with the dialogue. The episode I just finished reviewing was about Shakar and Akira and their relationship, and how Ducat was envious of it and really kind of trying to tear it up and tear it into pieces. But I just think that the dialogue is so clever. It's just they know how to play with each other's emotions and press each other's buttons, and there's so much drama. It's so intense. And like you say, the message is subtle, so it's not just like over the top. You should do this and you should do that, but it's almost left in the air where you have to kind of come to your own realization about things.
Right.
And even sometimes they leave it open ended. Sometimes they make you think. For example, Cisco would end an episode with a look of inquisitive on his face, as if, did he do the right thing or not? And so you don't even know if you think he did the right thing or if he did the wrong thing, and they kind of leave it up in the air for you to decide.
Right. Okay. I get this is in reference to the last episode. So, and this is from Nick. So there you go. I have a feeling I gave him a heads up. He's one of my oldest friends. I gave him a heads up that you were going to be here. So I'm assuming this is why he decided to join Tonight of All Nights, because DS9 is his favorite.
Yeah.
Although he does like Enterprise, but it's okay. You're allowed to have other favorites. Just
you are. It's not a competition, but it's really, it's homage to the writers. I think when people say something is their favorite, it's because they have grown attached to the characters, because they have believed the characters and their stories, and the more believable those stories are, the more personally attached you are to them. Right. The more you're convinced that that's your favorite. So I just think it's really an homage to the wonderful writing and producing we had on our show.
And there you go. In his opinion, has the best storytelling. There you go.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you guys had a lot. I mean, obviously you had a little bit to overcome, because I think the first thing that, everybody was like, it's a space station. It's Star Trek. Why aren't they trekking?
Mm-hmm.
But all the action came to you guys, and I think you had a lot to say. I mean, with the Bajoran and the relationship with the Cardassians and just everything that was going on in the rebuilding. I mean, the Bajorans were trying to rebuild their civilization.
Yeah, I think the thing that people thought was a deterrent to our success, which is the fact that we weren't traveling the world on a space station. I mean, a spaceship. That actually worked to our advantage in a kind of strange way, because we were stable, because we had the station, because we had the wormhole. I believe that we were able to tell these kinds of stories in more depth, and instead of just moving along to the next adventure, and leaving whatever civilization you encountered behind to fix the next civilization or encounter the next journey. In this case, you actually had ongoing storylines that kept growing and changing, and you get to really get into the meat of the Dominion, the occupation, and how it affected the Bajorans and the Cardassians, and you get to see the rise and fall of different people, and I think it's more stable of a place to tell these kinds of stories.
I know, absolutely, and just Nick's a little biased. So.
Okay. Okay.
But that's totally fair. But honestly, I think too, to me, it was something fresh. It's like you can only tell the same stories. Like, we're on a ship, we're traveling the galaxy. We're on a ship, we're traveling the galaxy. How about we try something different? And we're going to stay in one place and let the galaxy kind of come to us. So I think the timing was good, because it kind of broke everything up, because then it allowed, and then they get like, well, okay, so Voyager is going to go someplace where nobody's ever been. So again, that was freshening things up, as opposed to, but I think the timing was good, because you already had 2 series doing this, basically the same thing. And now it's like, it's time for a change. Let's see what other stories we can tell.
I think so, and I think Avery Brooks did have a lot to do with it too. Obviously, he carried the show, and um,
Mhm.
he delivered for 7 seasons. Um, but I really want to credit both the writers and the actors. So I don't think I think it's a good synergy. It was a great idea to begin with. There was so much there to work with,
Right.
and the fact that we're in one place really you get into the details. You get to really pick apart what's going on specifically with um, all the people. So you get to check out the Jemadar, you get to check out the founders, and we start really getting in depth and start to learn about the subtle nuances of war and tough decision making and being colonized, and things that surprisingly a lot of these things are in the headlines today. So it's
Right.
really remarkable how well they picked certain subjects to cover, that are now
Right.
currently, things that we're talking about in the headlines today.
Right, because yeah, I mean, obviously, when you have something like Star Trek with an ensemble cast, whether you're on a starship or a space station, you've got your core group, and that's where the character building lies. But they're meeting new people every week. With Deep Space Nine, it wasn't just being able to build the characters within the core, but was able to build out, like you said, like with the Jem'Hadar and everybody else. It's like there are characters that are recurring every week. There are species that are recurring every week or every few weeks. So there was a lot. There was a lot more meat to every single character and all these different species because we're learning about them all going forward.
Yeah, and also another credit to the guest stars on the show, the people that showed up so many times and put in so much work. Guys like Aaron Eisenberg, guys like Max Grodenchik,
Mm-hmm.
guys like Andrew Robinson
Right.
and Mark Alimo and Casey Biggs and Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah.
These guys were all so amazing. They could have had their own shows. They could have had their own shows. Uh,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so
Okay.
they did great jobs.
All right. Now we have to move on. Oh, wait. Before we move off of Deep Space Nine, Tony Todd happens to be one of my. I love Tony. I've had the pleasure of meeting him and speaking to him a couple times. He's also a fellow Patriots fan. So shout out to Tony. He played an older Jake Sisko.
Yeah.
Did you talk to him? I mean, did he ask you, well, or want to get to know Jake from your perspective, or did he just kind of read the script and talk to the directors about it?
No, he talked to me. Um, I remember him coming to the set and introducing himself, and you know, me being intimidated by.
I was just gonna say he's a little intimidating if you don't know.
He's a big guy,
He
uh,
is.
and he's Candyman. So I mean, that you can't escape that. Um, but no, he actually talked with me, and he said, "I'm going to be watching you for a couple of days. Just do your thing, and don't mind me, but I'm just going to be studying." And I'm like, "All right." So Candyman's in the corner watching me.
I was just gonna say that you got the Candyman watching you. That's real comforting. Yeah, but for anybody that has the chance to meet Tony, and I know he doesn't do a lot of Star Trek conventions, but he does horror conventions, and he's such a sweetheart. He's so great to talk to. He's so easy, and like I said, he loves me because I'll always talk to him about the Patriots. But he's a really great guy, and I thought he did a great job. So I was just curious if he learned from you, which must, like you said, was intimidating. I mean,
Well, he
yeah.
didn't learn anything from me because remember
Well,
he'd been acting years before I was probably born.
oh
So
no, I meant I'm learning Jake from you.
but he
Learning Jake.
learned Jake from me. He studied my nuances. He studied my behavior and did his best to emulate that. I thought he was fantastic at it. Um,
Right.
he should have won an award for that episode. I think he just really nailed it. And also, Tony Todd he's classically trained actor. He comes from the stage. He's one of the Shakespearean actors out there that have so much knowledge. So it's not like he just popped up one day and nailed it. He has a long history of experience, and he's been doing it for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, big Tony Todd fan. Anybody out there that's a horror fan that doesn't know who the Candyman is, you are missing out, because that's I think the first thing I ever saw him in. And once you hear that voice, you recognize it no matter where it is. Like, I mean, Kern, when he does Kern on TNG, I was like, oh, that's Tony Todd. Like, you don't even need to see his name in the credits; you can just tell, because he's got that wonderful voice.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and what a gentle person too. I mean,
Absolutely.
big guy. He's got a sweetheart.
He really is. He is one of the nicest. He's actually one of the first conventions I ever volunteered for. I ended up working his line, so I got to spend a couple of days with him, and he's just he's an absolute sweetheart. There you go. Aw. Well, you know what? That's the sign of a good actor, when they can evoke those kinds of emotions. But obviously, your acting career did not stop when that camera panned away from you on DS9. I know you've got a lot of other credits, but the one that caught my eye, you've been on Days of Our Lives twice, and that is my soap. I grew up watching that soap.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. Wait, Days! You were a prison guard for a couple of episodes.
I was, yeah, and I grew up watching that show too. So it was actually really cool to be on the set and work with those guys. It was such an honor for me. Really fun doing it. But yeah, I grew up watching As Sands Through an Hourglass.
Glass, yep, McDonald Carey. Oh my gosh, my mom. I was on half days. Kindergarten when I was a kid was half days. So, and was always on at 1 o'clock. So whenever I was home from kindergarten, my mom and I would sit and have lunch and watch Days of Our Lives. So I've been watching it since 1975, I guess.
Okay, then you're before me. I only watched when Bo was a big deal. I don't know if you remember Bo, but
Bo. Oh my God, Peter Reckle. Yeah, Bo. 80s. That was the big deal. Bo and Hope in the 80s, the super couples.
yeah.
Yeah, but what's really funny is you aren't the only Days of Our Lives person that I know, because last year, when I was at STLV, the booth I was working in, we were right next to the Land of the Lost crew.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that Wesley Ure, who was Will on Land of the Lost, was Mike Horton. He was the original Mike Horton from like the mid 70s to the early 80s. And I was like, you were who? And he showed me a picture. I went, oh, I remember you. This is like my childhood. I'm like, oh my God. But when I saw him dressed like Mike Horton, I'm like, you were freaking Mike Horton on Days of Our Lives. But he actually, what's really cool about Wesley is he lets me fangirl out about Days. Because I'll ask him, like, do you know this person? Did you work with this person? And he's like, yeah, I did. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, I was wandering around the set, looking at everything. Just it was actually cool to be in the jail scene, because I'd seen that jailhouse I don't know how many times.
Oh, I know. It's like, I'm in Salem. That is, you were what, Matt? Because Maggie was in jail, right? That's who.
Yeah, and I was the guard interacting with them. So yeah, it was cool.
That's absolutely amazing. But I know besides acting, you do have some other projects that we were going to talk about. One of them is Abyssinian Kiosk. Is that how you say it?
That is, yeah. Abyssinian.
Hey, I got it right. And the website for that is, there you go.
Boom. Yeah, that's it.
That's it. I got it right off the website. And it is some incredible merchandise. So why don't you know it better than I do, so why don't you tell the folks all about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's all original stuff. My sister has been spending her days really coming up with original designs and trying to pay as much homage to our culture, celebrating Ethiopian heritage. And if you go on the site, you'll see a lot of designs, original cross designs, Ethiopian designs, but you'll also see some Cisco Kid stuff, which is Star Trek inspired. And it's, it's a really good place to get some gifts for your friends and family.
And the stuff, I was there. The stuff is beautiful. I love how you've worked the Delta into the Cisco Kid stuff. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So
thank you. Yeah, we got some new stuff we're working on to come out for this year, and So for those of you that already have a lot of the stuff, look forward to seeing new designs. And for those of you that haven't checked it out, you can spend some time on there and see if you find something you like.
There you go. See?
Yeah, all right.
And if you really want to impress Cirroc, and if it's called the 55-year mission now, it's not technically STLV anymore. But if you really want to impress Cirroc, you should pick up some stuff and then wear it. Go by his table and say hi, and while you're wearing his stuff, I bet you, right?
I would love it. Yeah, I mean, we appreciate everybody's support. We have some of the best fans, and the people that have been on there shopping have been just so supportive, and I've been thankful for all of them. Their help, their support, their love. They've just been awesome. I've got people posting pictures of themselves in different outfits, and it's just it's a real blessing to have such supportive fans, and that's one of the things that Deep Space Nine and Star Trek in general is known for. It's really amazing fans.
Absolutely. I mean, I've just got my little podcast, and I have people that just come and hang out with me every Monday night just so we can all talk about Star Trek and just hang out. And I think it's absolutely amazing, and I love it. And I can't believe that we had a year without a Star Trek convention, because it just kills me, because I miss everybody so much. These are people that I only get to see maybe once a year if I'm lucky. So, I mean, I was actually just listening. I did a podcast back in July. I got interviewed. I was on a podcast. This really nice guy over in England, and I just finished listening to it. And he asked me, the last thing he asked me was describe Star Trek in one word, and I was like, family. Didn't even have to think about it, because you really feel that way.
I think about family. Yeah, I do. That's who's carried us this far, and that's what makes the show so successful. That's why we have conventions, and that was actually one of the reasons we decided to do the virtual TrekCon, was to make sure that we didn't go last year empty-handed, and the people were able to still experience the joys of getting together and talking Trek and being around their friends and getting in chat groups. And Ryan and I, with the Seventh Rule, decided that it would be best for the fans and for the franchise to have a virtual convention to celebrate, and that's how we approached doing the virtual TrekCon.
And just so you know, I absolutely know all about all three VTCs, because I participated in it. Lambda Quadrant participated in it, because you guys have always been so generous about sharing your stage and having Lambda Quadrant as a group come on. And then my favorite thing, obviously, was that panel that we did with Gary Graham and Eric Purepoint. That was so much from the Alienation reunion. And the virtual conventions are amazing, and it is a really good way to kind of hold the community together. But again, nothing beats being able to come up to somebody and give them a big hug. I mean, it's,
Yeah, no, there's nothing that can supplement that. And the last time I really, one of the great memories that I have of Aaron Eisenberg was spending the last creation convention together and just hanging out on his autograph table. And those memories are cherished for me now. They just mean so much, because I know that I can have them again.
That's where I have my last memories of Aaron. It was the first year that I had the NX7062 podcast, and I had gone out to everybody. And I said, if you can't get to Vegas, send me questions and I'll be happy to see if I can get them answered for you. And somebody wanted to ask Aaron about Paper Moon. And so I went up to him and we were chatting, and he said, and he was so sweet. And he's like, Stephanie, he said, by Thursday he'd already lost his voice, because it's Aaron and he talks to everybody. And he said he just didn't have a voice to do the interview. And I actually ended up calling him like the week after he'd rested his voice, and he just did it. He just answered the question for me over the phone. Unfortunately, my audio got so screwed up. I mean, I still played it, but it sounded terrible, but you could hear him at least answer the questions.
Yeah.
But it was just, I mean, it was better. to talk to him on the phone because it was a really drawn out conversation as opposed to, when you have to talk to him at his table, there would have been no time because he just, he talked to everybody.
Yeah, he talks. He's a good talker, that's for sure. He's perfect for a podcast because he's
yeah, exactly. He knew what he was doing when you guys hooked up and started the seventh rule. You guys absolutely knew what you were doing. My last memory of him though was having lunch. He and Melissa invited me to have lunch with them the last day. It was Sunday, and Melissa had to go back to the booth to get something. She had forgotten something, so Aaron and I were walking up to the Hash House a Go-Go, and I just remember, we were just chatting, and we had ended up somehow chatting about driving home. The trip, because they always drove out. So driving from Vegas to LA, and we just had this entire chat about it. I said, yeah, it's something I've always wanted to try. Could you see it in movies? People talk about like that drive, and I know you've made that drive. So it's just one of those things, like I would love to just go to Vegas one day and rent a car and just drive to LA just to say I've done it. So
yeah, I mean the drive it's legendary. I've been there many times. I've done it many times. There's a way you can go if you want to go through the desert. You can actually go through Joshua Tree through kind of a back road type scenario.
Oh, wow.
But no, I've taken that trip, and actually I prefer to drive because I did try to fly once or twice to Vegas, and I had bad experiences on the flights. So I've made a vow to myself to always drive to Vegas if I'm going to go.
Yeah, like I said, I just honestly, when everything got so foobarred with Corona, I had a huge birthday plan for August. You and I'm August 1st. You're August 7th.
Yep.
IMDb is such a wealth of information. So I had planned to go out to Vegas early for 2020, and then the convention got canceled, and I'm like, you know what? I have the biggest birthday plans. I still want to go to Vegas. My friend from Seattle was going to meet me, so we were going to do Vegas. Then we were thinking about doing that drive, renting a car and doing that drive, and then Vegas shut down, so I ended up not doing it. But that was actually on my schedule for this summer to maybe try and do that drive, just to, like I said, just to say I've done it, because it's just one of those things. It seems iconic to be able to say that you did that drive. So if I ever do it, I will ask you for the best ways to go.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the best times to go too.
Yeah, exactly. I just know that they're not very conducive for doing panels, because you tried to do the Lambda Quadrant panel from the drive, and that didn't work out very well.
Yeah, not good for panels because you're riding in the mountains most of the time, and so your signal comes in and out whenever it decides to.
Well, that's the only thing is, the only other is, like, you think that the hills have eyes. I know I'm going to be riding through the desert.
Yeah.
So I just better have a really good car and plenty of gas, and I should be okay.
And some water. Just in case.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, let's see. Okay, what do we got from domestic? Love seeing Aaron Eisenberg karaoke night, says TLP. Oh yeah. Not a lot of stars poke their nose into karaoke if they're not hosting it. But you're a singer, Cirroc. Maybe this time around, if there's karaoke, you should pop by, maybe sing something.
Yeah, I'll sing something. I'll give you some Biggie Smalls.
There you go.
Michael Jackson or something.
I'm gonna hold you to that, because I always do enterprise karaoke. Obviously, if I have to choose between two karaoke nights, I always like to do enterprise karaoke. And of course,
Do you have a go-to song? Do you have a go-to song?
For enterprise karaoke, it's Where My Heart Will Take Me. I sing the theme. But if it's just regular karaoke, I like to do the Beatles. I'm a big Beatles buff. So,
Okay.
and I'm an alto. So, although I've been practicing, I do a couple of Lady Gagas. I've started to kind of practice with her, but mostly I'm classic rock, Beatles, Meatloaf. I used to do, when I lived in central Pennsylvania, I used to do Paradise by the Dashboard Light with a couple of like chosen few people. And every now and then, if I feel like getting my country on, I'll do some Shania Twain.
Shania.
I used to compete with one of the first karaoke contests I ever did was If You're Not In It for Love, one of her first big hits I used to do. And I actually do a killer Santa Baby around Christmas.
Okay. All right.
I won a karaoke contest doing Santa Baby once. I actually knew somebody that dressed up like Santa Claus, did a whole big he got a big lap dance while I was singing.
I figured you'd have to have a lap dance in there if you won the karaoke contest.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Lasso. Yes, and I do know this about him. This is Magic Lasso. He's another really good. He's a really good friend of mine. He actually doesn't watch Star Trek, but he's amazingly supportive. And I tell everybody every week, if you're into comic books, go check out Magic Lasso on YouTube because he is a comic book aficionado.
Yeah, I'm in the comics.
Are you seriously? He's got an incredible collection of comics, and he talks about them on his channel. It's Magic Lasso, as in one, aka Wonder Woman, because she's his go-to girl. He's a huge Wonder Woman
Yeah, I
fan.
stopped collecting, but I did collect a lot when I was growing up.
I tried. When I got into it, it's just so hard to keep up with everything. I have I pick and choose. I have like some Star Wars comics. I have some Superman comics. I have some Wonder. I don't have anything consistent.
No, I have a bunch of X-Men. I was big on X-Men when I was growing up.
Yeah, the comic book community on YouTube is pretty cool. It's definitely, if you're a collector, it's definitely something you can check out. But Lasso does these unboxings where he shows off like all of the stuff he has, and it's just his knowledge is infinite. I lost a Flash comic book when I was a kid, and the cover was like imprinted in my head. And I told him about it. I'm like, yeah, it's this Flash cover, and they're doing this and doing this. We were talking about it. Not 5 minutes later, he sent me the link. He found it for me, and he sent me the link. So then I knew the issue number and when it came out and all this other stuff. On my first New York Comic Con, I found it. I went to one of the comic book dealers, and knowing what I was looking for, I actually found the comic book. So,
wow.
Yeah. So he's my go-to guys. And I did promise Nick. Nick has a podcast that he invited me on. We're going to be talking about music. So it's a music podcast. Nick, I don't remember the name of the podcast. Put it up in the chats and I'll put it out there. But he's like, I want to talk to you about music. I'm like, what about music? He's like, whatever you want to talk. I'm like, karaoke? He's like, yeah, we'll talk about karaoke. So, and Cirroc, you're musically inclined. Do you have a CD out recent? You had a recent project with music?
I have a CD. It's not out. I have it. It's never been released.
It's never been released? Why aren't you bringing it to conventions? You should bring it to.
Yeah, I didn't want to release it. I just wanted to record.
Oh, that's fair. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I may eventually at some point release some of the music, but I just wanted to record it to get it out of my head. And
gotcha. Okay, that's fair. No, you know what? When I was growing up, I wrote poetry, and I was like that. I wrote poetry, but I wrote it for myself to put it on paper. But it was very rare that I actually wanted anybody to read it. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much of an overlap of the rap fans and the Star Trek fans. I don't know how much overlap there is there. They're kind of two separate genres.
Well, honestly, but you know what? I started this podcast partially. I mean, it's about the community and Star Trek, and whatever. But part of the reason that I started this was because when I had guests on, such as yourself, I have a personal theory. You can either be a Jake Sisko fan, or you can be a Cirroc Lofton fan. If you're a Jake Sisko fan, that's completely legitimate. But if you want to call yourself a Cirroc fan, then maybe find out what else Cirroc has done. And maybe, see about supporting Cirroc or any Star Trek actor in something else that they do, because you never know. You might find something else that you like about them.
Right.
Like when I found out that Chase Masterson had a jazz, she had a CD out. First convention I saw her at, she sang Pure Imagination. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. So I immediately went to her table and bought her CD. So that's what I'm all about here. I have a lot of respect for anybody that's a Jake Sisko fan, but you're here, so let's talk about other things.
No, we have a lot of talented people in the community.
Absolutely.
Tim Russ has his band.
Yeah.
Armin Shimmerman writes books. We have a lot of people that are producing different things. So no, I was actually headed that direction, but then I just decided to hold off on it. It was really about therapy for me and getting the words out, and
Yep.
it's like poetry for me. So it's a poem. Poems.
Absolutely. Totally respect that. So Lasso obviously wants to know. It sounds like you're a Marvel guy. You said X-Men.
Yeah, I like X-Men. I also like the Punisher and Silver Surfer, Spider-Man. Yeah, I'm a Marvel guy more than a DC guy, I guess.
Yeah, obviously. I'm more of a DC girl than a Marvel, but the Marvel movies, you can't beat those. Did you watch The Punisher on Netflix? Or are you just the comic books?
No, I'm just a comic book guy. I didn't.
Oh, I actually did background on an episode of The Punisher because they film out in New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I still have my Punisher comic book somewhere around here. Yeah, I got
You
it.
should them praised if they're good. You put them on those slabs. You've heard of slabbing, where you take like your most valuable ones and you have them encased in plastic.
Oh,
You have
no,
them-
my comics are encased in plastic. Yeah, I actually collected them. I didn't really read them as much as
Oh, got you. Okay.
bought them and put them in plastic.
All right. So Nick was listening. It's called Music's Not. Oh, there you go. If Cirroc ever decides to release it, Nick wants to hear it. Nick's very musically inclined. Like I said, we grew up together, and that's one of the things that we always used to. We were in choir together and musicals together in high school. So he's a pretty decent musician. He also helped me with my Beatles class. I took a Beatles class in college for my music. For my chords.
Yeah, I've actually sold music to different artists. So I've sold music before.
Oh, that's amazing.
As a writer, but
I was going to say that's actually where it's more lucrative to be a writer, isn't it?
it is more lucrative to be a writer. I think in music was actually selling the music, but performing and doing other things, I know it's not really that lucrative. But you do it because you love it. You do it because you have a message. I think you have something to say, and that's why I did it. I had a message. I had something to say, and I said it. I just haven't released it yet. I'm taking my time on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, music, poetry, all that, it's so intensely personal. So you really have to letting go like that to put it out there. It's something that you really
and a lot of it's autobiographical, so it's like personal stories about things I've been in life, and
right.
some of them I'm not sure I want to share yet. Some good times, some really bad times. So yeah,
music is therapy. Absolutely.
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, writing is hard.
Okay. Writing can be hard. I think. I mean, for me, like I said, I haven't put pen to paper for poetry in a very long time. But usually, for me, it was like I was one of those people that inspiration just kind of hit, and I just scribbled it all out. So sometimes I think it can be easy, and sometimes I think it can be really difficult. I think it all depends on what you have to say.
Yeah, I spend a lot of times writing things on napkins and on the back of menus, and whenever I get some words, and I just put them down wherever I can. Now you can write it in your phone, in your notes. So I have a bunch of stuff written down all over the place in my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing is sometimes like a lyric or something pops in your head at like the worst time where you don't have any place to put it, and then 5 minutes later it's gone.
Yeah, and you try to remember it, and you say, "I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that," and then it leaves your head just as fast as it got in there, and that's the last of it. So you have to write it down. Write it down on anything, a napkin, on money, whatever you can, but get the words down, because sometimes it just leave you and you can't even remember it.
Yeah, I think, you know what, and sometimes with me, ideas and stuff like that, they always come when you're like half awake, like 5 in the morning and you're laying in bed. I actually put a notepad next to my bed at one point just because I'm like, I know if I have to wake myself up just to get that down on a piece of paper, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. But get it out and do the things that you want to do, and and express yourself as best you can, whether you share with everybody or not. But I think getting it out is important, and making sure you exercise that muscle is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is putting your soul out there, and that's where you have to decide, if you want to keep it personal or if you want to release it to the world.
Yeah.
So, but on that note, Cirroc, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you being here. And just as a quickie this is new. Where did I put it? Well, first of all, you should follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Absolutely. But you should subscribe here on YouTube. But the other thing is I'm on Patreon now. And I know you guys are on Patreon too, right?
Yes, we're on Patreon.
So if you go over to Patreon, you can find me under NX7062. You find the Seventh Rule podcast, and you can support us because you love us, and that should be reason enough to support us.
Because we're all in this together. We're all here for each other. I mean, it's a really tight knit community, and everybody's so helpful and so supportive, and that's what these times I think have reminded us more than ever is that human interaction, our friends, our family, how much we cherish them, and that's what really means the most to any of us. So I think this time has really shown that the most.
Absolutely. I think for the community, we've all really come together at this point, and I think it's amazing. And I hope that it continues once things get back to whatever normal is going to be. But I think it will. Absolutely. So, guys, thank you as always for joining me here on the NX7062 podcast. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can even email me at NX7062 podcast. Please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate the follows. And until next week, everybody, live long and prosper.
This is Nicole DeBoer, and you've been listening to the NX7062 podcast.